Hello, welcome to Essentials of Computer Architecture and Organization. We're moving along quickly through the various chapters in this course, and we're down to the last two. And so for this lecture, we're going to be covering architecture, examples, and hierarchy. And so we'll just go ahead and get right into that. There's actually two parts, and we'll just do that as a single lecture. So we'll be talking about architectural examples here, and a couple things that would be useful for us to remember is to recall that architecture can be presented at multiple levels of abstraction. So we can use the term architectural hierarchy to refer to that. And so there's two classifications, macroscopic and microscopic. So macroscopic would be dealing with the whole computer versus microscopic would be dealing with a single integrated circuit within that overall architecture. So what are the possible architectural levels? We have things at the system, the board, and the chip level. And as we work through this lecture, I think you'll start to get a perspective on the distinctions and where some of that starts to play out. So why don't we take an example of a system level architecture, and we'll use a personal computer to talk about that. And so the functional units, if we think of the von Neumann architecture, that there's a processor, memory, and the I/O, so all that's necessary. But plus we need to have the interconnections, both high speed and low speed interconnections. So the high speed bus is for the high speed devices and functional units, and for the lower speed, it would be things that don't require that kind of speed. So for the bus interconnections and bridging, we would like to have us recall that the bridge technology is used to interconnect buses. And so we can allow multiple buses in a computer system, and the processor only connects to one bus, but there may be things that need to go beyond that. And so the bridge maps between the bus address spaces. So this is one of the ways that you can allow for backward compatibility. And if you've ever worked with a computer, looking at its motherboard or whatever, you can see all kinds of different types of devices that can hook into that. And a manufacturer is going to try and have some legacy devices that still would be relevant. And so you could have a state-of-the-art motherboard and yet having some of those things that could be from previous generations up to a point. So here's an example of a bridge. And so if we consider a PC and we have these two different types of buses, we can have a peripheral component interconnect, a PCI, versus an industry standard architecture. And so these are uncompatible and can't be connected directly, but the solution is we can have two buses connected with a bridge. That's how we allow for communication. So here, in terms of a logical PC architecture with a bridge, this is how it will look like. And so we have the PCI and the ISA buses are hooked together with this bridge. And so the interconnection is basically transparent, and we can work with those two different architectures. So in terms of the physical architecture, the implementation of a bridge is more complex than our conceptual diagram implies, but we want to at least introduce the concept here. So it usually uses special purpose controller chips, and it separates high speed and low speed, and provides the illusion of a bus over a direct connection. So that's what we're trying to show. So what about a typical PC architecture? The two controller chips that are used is a north bridge and a south bridge, and we'll talk about this in the next handful of charts. So the north bridge is for the processor, memory, and the advanced graphical port, AGP interface, so the graphics card. And the south bridge is how you can connect with some of the lower speed units, relatively speaking. The local area network or LAN, the PCI bus, and the keyboard, mouse, or printer port, and I would throw in Wi-Fi as well. And so here is how that could look like. And so we're seeing this north bridge and this south bridge. and we're seeing this demarcation of what's above. So this is more of the von Neumann classical things that we're used to thinking in terms of RAM, processor, and I/O. And so here we have the processor, here we have the RAM, and here are some examples of I/O, whether it be for graphics or other streaming communication. And below, we have the things of how you're connecting with your audio. You can have USB interconnects, PCI, various types of connects, having your local area network, and all that would be administered by the South Bridge. So in terms of, well, what are examples of some of the chips that could be used? And so for the North Bridge, the Intel 8286-5PE, and for a South Bridge, once again, an Intel part, ICH5. Those are examples of some common things that are out there. There's all kinds of moving targets in terms of the connecting speed of various devices. And so just to give you a perspective, here we have USB 1.0 versus USB 3.0, which is now becoming more or less a fairly current standard. And there's other things that are intermixed here. You can see how the clock rates for registers are extremely high, memory is high, but then you have other things that maybe aren't as high, say like a PCI bus. An AGP would be higher, and so you can just see how that would work in terms of the clock rates, the data widths, and the throughput, the registers having the highest throughput. So that's a rough perspective on that. Bridging functionality and virtual buses, let's talk about that. And so the controller chips can virtualize hardware. So an example would be a controller can present the illusions of multiple buses to the processor. So one possible form would be a controller presents 3 virtual buses, one that contains a host of memory, one that contains high graphical devices, and another one that corresponds to the PCI slots for I/O devices, whether it be lower data rate things, stuff like that. So in terms of an example of a board level architecture, we can consider an Ethernet interface, and we'll have a picture of what this looks like. So consider a local area network. There's a transfer between the computer and the network, and the physically it connects separate circuits on the board, and it usually contains an embedded processor or microcontroller and buffer memory. And this is an example how that could look like. And so you have the host interface, what's going to the computer, and what is the out externally facing going to the network. And here we have the inners of what that would look like, having DRAM, different types of random access memory, and you have a network processor. So kind of a high level type of illustration of what that would look. And let's talk about the memory in there. So first we have the SRAM, which is relatively high, and it has to be constantly refreshed, versus the DRAM, which is lower speed and does not need to have this refresh circuit and is higher cost. So the designer decides which of these data items to place in each memory. So what about chip level architecture? So this describes the structure of a single integrated circuit. The components are functional units, and it can include onboard processors, memory, or buses. And so here's an example of a chip level architecture, and I won't go through this in as much detail, but you can see how we're going between a media access unit and a PCI bus access unit. And here are some of the innards that would be now looking at a chip level architecture. In terms of a structure of a functional units on a chip, and so we can be thinking of SRAM access unit as an example. And so we have the SRAM, and here is the thing that controls and mediates the data, the clock signals, address, and data from all these other sources. And so I will just quickly go over this and just have another example of a functional unit on a chip. So in summary, the architecture of a digital system can be viewed at several levels of abstraction. The system architecture shows the entire computer system. Board architecture shows individual circuits, and the chip architecture shows individual ICs. So we have system, board, and chip. And the functional unit architecture shows individual units on an integrated circuit. We exampled examples of the hierarchy that can be there. So starting from the highest level, the entire PC, we can be talking about physical interconnections of a PC, the local area network of a PC, network processing on a local area network interface, and finally looking at the RAM, the random access memory, thinking of an SRAM example and the access that it would have on a network processor chip. So that's the first part of this lecture. Now we'll go into the second, and here we're going to be focusing more on the hardware modality and examples of chip level processors, thinking about network processors. And so a network processor can be thought of as a special purpose programmable hardware device that combines a low cost and flexibility of a reduced in instruction set computing processor and the speed and scalability of custom silicon. So that's what we're trying to look at here. So in terms of commercial network processors, these first started to come out in the 1990s when the .com and the internet started to come together. So it's used in products since 2000, and by 2003, more than 30 vendors existed with a larger variety of architectures, and optimization was done with parallelisms and pipeline. And currently only a handful of vendors remain viable. And so here is an illustration of an augmented risk, how that would look. And we can just see some of these interesting details that are associated with this kind of a construct. So in terms of a parallel processor plus coprocessors, here is an example how that would look. And so we can have external search, external memory, and a host interface. And so that's one side of it. And then we have the control interface, the debug port, and other things down here that we're all trying to get hooked together. So that's yet another thing for us to be considering. And now thinking about the pipeline. So this is a Cisco type of homogeneous processor where it is trying to just clock things through in an input and an output. And here are the multiple steps that are used. Here is a pipeline of parallel heterogeneous processors. So in this case, they're not identical. And so we have a couple different classes of types of processors that are leveraged. Here's an extensive and diverse processors. And I will just flash this up. I'm not going to really focus on this here, but here is yet another example. Here is another example of an embedded processor that is fairly complex. And for a short pipeline of unconventional processors, here's what that could look like. And so the classifier uses programmable pattern matching, and the traffic manager includes a 256,000 queue that's available. Here is an extremely long pipeline. So we can, this is looking at an example where there's 200 processors, and each processor executes 4 instructions per packet. And so the external coprocessor is used to pass the state. So once again, we're just seeing a lot of examples, and so I'm just quickly trying to give you a survey of this material. You can refer to Coomer for more detailed walking through this information. Here is a parallel packet processor example. So that's there, and here's an example of complexity for a PCI access unit. So that part was just trying to give you a little bit more insight of some of the instantiations of those hardwares. And so I'm going to finish this lecture now, and thank you very much.